Hi there, I'm Taylor and welcome to Tay TV, the place to be for all things yoga and wellness related. Today's video is about hip openers, these hips of ours. If you're someone who struggles with stiff hips in general, or if you're like me and today you sat way too long doing your work at your laptop or your desk, and your hips could just use a stretch, this is going to feel amazing. So when you're ready, roll out your mat and I'm going to walk you through my 5 favorite poses to stretch out our hips. Okay, so my 5 favorite poses, we're going to start with low lunge. So the easiest way to get into this pose, I think, is from down dog. So just planting your hands, lifting your hips up and back. Maybe even take a few breaths here, walking out the dog, stretching out the calves, just because that feels good too, right? And then when you're ready, you can lift that right leg up and back, and then stepping it forward, placing the foot in between the hands, and dropping that back knee. You can also do a high lunge for this too, but this is more relaxing. So we're gonna do a low lunge today. So lifting the upper body up off of the thigh, staying lifted. A few variations with your arms, whatever feels good for you in terms of finding more release in your shoulders, but focusing on the hips today, right? So in this pose, sometimes a lot of people find this painful with that back knee. Prop it up with a blanket. That always helps. Or a towel or something, fold the mat over for some extra cushion there. Or also a very simple change that you can do. If you're sitting up like this and placing more weight on that knee, lean forward. See if that changes things for you. It does for me. When I figured that out, it was a game changer. So really leaning into this pose, right? Then you'll feel the stretch in the left hip too, hip flexor here. And noticing if that front knee is over the ankle, mine's a little bit behind, but what you really want to make sure is that it's not going forward. If it is, slide that foot out, give yourself some room. That's your body telling you that your hips are more open than you think they are, so give them that space to stretch even more. So the last thing I'll give you, a last tip I'll give you about this pose as you're breathing here, is energetically squeezing the inner thighs together. So when you do that, you lift up a little bit, and that's to protect the thighs, the inner thighs, and also the lower back. So instead of just sinking into this pose, staying activated. Okay, so take one more full breath here. And then releasing that. Coming back to all fours, and then again down dog, flipping the toes, lifting the hips. We'll come to the other side. Again, maybe taking a breath or two in between, walking out the dog. And then lifting that left leg up and back, stepping it forward, low lunge on this side. So dropping that back knee, and then rising up. Again, noticing a few things, right? Leaning into that back knee and hip, so we're not just sitting straight up, right? So leaning forward a little bit, feeling that on that right hip flexor feels so good. Checking that front knee, making sure that it's not passing the ankle, giving ourselves space to lean and stretch here, right? Keep breathing. Don't forget to breathe. Then again, energetically squeezing the inner thighs together so you're lifted a little bit. Sometimes I like to put my palms on that top thigh as a reminder to lift up, really lengthening the spine here so I'm not crunching my lower back. Taking 2 more full breaths here. And then releasing the hands, stepping back to all fours, and again lifting the toes, or flipping the toes, lifting the hips up and back, down dog. Again, walking it out a little bit. That's the first pose. So we did low lunge. Second pose is going to be lizard. So same thing, lift that right leg up and back, and then stepping it forward. First in between the hands, then shifting that right hand so it's inside the right foot. Toe heel the right foot out so it's closer to the edge of your mat, the right edge of the mat. Back knee can be lifted, or again, in this case, something a little more relaxing, drop the knee. And so a few things, just like it's a very similar feeling as the low lunge, right? So that's why we started with that. Hopefully the hips are a little more open now. But same thing, leaning into that back knee, back hip, so we're not sitting up like this, right? And maybe that's where you are. The first thing you're going to be working on if your hips are really stiff is just this motion, getting a little deeper here. And then stay here. Focus on lengthening the spine. Sometimes our tendency is want to roll and hunch the shoulders and the head. Stay lifted. Keep the gaze a little bit forward. It doesn't have to be, straight up, but not quite down. We want to keep that length in the neck and the spine. And then if this feels good, you want to take it a little deeper. You can work to slide the forearms down on the ground. If you can't quite reach the ground, use some blocks. If you have them, books, anything to support you, you can place it under one elbow or both. The goal here is you want to try to keep your shoulders leveled and even. So, take in one more full breath here. And then rising back up. Planting the hands. You step back to plank, and then again lifting the hips up and back, down dog. Coming to the other side, walking it out in between. Again, maybe taking a breath. And then lift that left leg up and back, stepping it forward. Again, placing the hand inside, or the foot inside the hands to begin with. Take that left hand inside that left foot, toe heel the left foot out to the side. Then we'll drop that back knee. You can keep it lifted if you'd like more of a challenge. And then from here, first start trying to lean into the hip and the back knee, right? Really feeling the stretch in the hips, opening it up. That's the first movement. If you go any deeper from here, so say that your hips are right here, you can't really go very deep yet, and then you're trying to go down on your elbows, you're really hunching your back. Really hunching your back, and that defeats the whole purpose of the pose, right? So stay where you are, honor where you are, honor where your body is today. It could be different than yesterday, and really let yourself warm up to this. So stay here. If you can't quite dip the hips and the knee down more comfortably, give it a little more space. Otherwise, if this feels good, then you can start to make your way down onto your forearms. Again, keeping the spine long, gaze not all the way down, a little bit forward, keeping the length in the neck. So taking one more full breath. And then coming back up, plant the hands, step back to plank. Again, lifting the hips up and back, down dog, walking it out a little bit. Taking a few breaths. Okay, so that was pose 2. Pose 3 and 4 are going to go hand in hand. So we'll do one complete side with both poses, and then we'll do the other one. So the pose 3 is a downward dog, 3-legged dog variation. So you'll start by lifting that right leg up and back. Maybe reaching it higher than you did before, really flexing through the heel. And then from here you can bend the knee, opening up the hip. Okay, so that's pose 3. You'll feel this stretch from the right hip all the way through the right wrist, keeping the right wrist and right palm grounded on the earth. And then for pose 4, we're coming to half pigeon. So re-squaring the hips, take that left knee towards the right wrist, or right knee to your right wrist, excuse me, and then right ankle up towards the left wrist. Okay, so a few phases for this. And I'll show you a modified version of this, but if you're comfortable in half pigeon, sit here and take a few breaths as I talk. First, a few things to notice. I always like to start by encouraging my students to square the hips. So coming onto your fingertips in line with the hips, give yourself the space to square the hips, really lengthening in the spine. You can prop a blanket or a bolster under that right hip if it can't quite touch the ground comfortably. And then if this feels good, then start to walk the hands out, lowering all the way down to the ground. Okay, so keep breathing here. The modified version of this, if this doesn't feel good on your knee, or you just can't quite, you're not into it today. The modified version is you can lay on your back, taking that right ankle up and over, bringing it outside the left leg, and then just reaching behind the left leg, hugging the legs into your chest. To open up the hips even more, slide that right elbow on the inside of that right thigh and pressing that leg away. So we'll take one more full breath wherever you are. And then releasing the leg if you're on your back, rising back up if you were on the ground. We'll make our way to downward facing dog once again. And a good counter stretch to that, you started with the hip opener. After you come up off the ground, lifting the leg back up, doing the same thing, bending the knee, opening the hip is a good counter stretch to that. And then release that leg. Switching sides, lift the left leg up and back. Again, taking your time, really grounding through that right heel, squaring the hips, and then bending the knee, open up the hip. Feeling the stretch from the left palm all the way up to the left hip on that left side body. Then re-squaring the hips, come into half pigeon. Left knee to left wrist, left ankle to right wrist. Working to square the hips on the earth. Again, taking a moment to bring the fingers in line with the hips, leveling everything out. Again, using a bolster or a blanket under that left hip for support if needed. And then if this feels good for you, no pressure in the knee, you can start to walk the hands all the way down, resting the forehead on the earth. And again, with the modification, staying there if you're good. Otherwise, one other variation, if you don't want to lay all the way down on the ground, is to stay lifted with your feet planted. Take that left ankle outside the right thigh, and you can lean into it like this. You'll get the same stretch in the hip and the glute, keeping the chest long, chest lifted, spine long. And wherever you are, taking one full breath. And then releasing that. So that's pose 3 and 4. Oh, I guess we'll go through the whole thing here again, right? Coming back up. You can lift that leg up and back, and take an option to bend the knee, opening up the hip as a counter pose. And then releasing that down. So that's pose 3 and 4. Pose 5 is bound ankle or butterfly pose. So you can come onto your seated position, bring the soles of your feet together, knees out to the side. And I've heard this a few different ways. You can either grab onto the outsides of the feet, grabbing onto the big toes, or onto the ankles. Either way, you want to keep the outer edge of the feet pressing onto the ground. So if holding the feet pulls it up too much, then do a different variation, right? First thing, rotating the pelvis. So if you find yourself sinking here, rounded spine, lifting up, long spine. You can also prop your hips up with a blanket here if that feels good. Again, elevating the hips. And then starting from here, lifting the chest nice and long in the spine. And as you exhale, folding, hinging at the hips. Taking a few breaths. I don't know about you, but this one feels particularly good for me right now. And so with all these poses, you can do them once with me, replay it, or pause it in between the poses, really taking your time if you want to take longer breaths and sit in the poses a little bit longer. Sometimes it takes our body, well, it definitely takes our body repetition and also more time sometimes to just let ourselves sink into a pose, right? All right, and then come back up. So that's the 5 poses, my favorite poses for hip openers. I hope this helped you release a little tension in the hips today. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up down below. Share some love, let me know what you think. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you like this video, you want to see more yoga related videos to help you with your poses and just going deeper in your practice in general, definitely subscribe. That way you don't miss an episode. New episodes every Wednesday, so I will see you next week, my friend. Have a great day. Namaste.